Hello, everyone, and welcome to another wonderful episode of the Think and Grow Rich Legacy podcast show. Today, we have a very incredible lady who has been an entrepreneur for many, many years. In fact, I think I've known her for almost 20 years as an entrepreneur, and so I'm excited and thrilled to have her today. We're going to start off with the one and only Mariela Sandoval. So without any further ado, Mariela, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm very excited to be here with you.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, let's get started. Obviously, I've known you for almost 2 decades now, and the audience has not heard of your name, or maybe they have, or they know you, or they've heard of you. But for the people who don't know you, we'd love to tell them who you are and what your background is. So let's start off with a little bit about your entrepreneurial upbringing.
Well, my upbringing, you have 2 hours, right, John?
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly.
I actually was brought up in a very entrepreneurial household, but I decided to, at a very young age, become an entrepreneur. I was brought up by very traditional. I'm Mexican, right? If you can't tell, right? But I am Mexican.
Now, were you born in Mexico or were you born here?
I was actually born here. I was
Okay.
actually born and raised here in Southern California. I am from Oxnard, California. And I was the first generation, so very traditional parents, right? Very traditional. I'm the youngest of 5. I'm the only girl. And my brothers had all gone to college, well, except one. He dropped out, but he calls himself the black sheep, right? And so my parents thought, I would become an attorney. That's really what I was supposed to do. And what I found out through my whole, through school and then watching my older brothers go to school was that they got out of school and it was a recession because they were about 10 years older than I was. So I was watching them and they had to go start their own business. They actually didn't go work in their professions. Oh, wow. And so then I started to take a look at that and say, you know what, if what I'm going to be doing is going to give me at that time a $30,000, $40,000 paycheck, right? And my parents, who speak no English, right, they came to this country and kind of built everything, from ground zero. And they had been making $100,000 already for many years. They were always very private about how much money they made, but I was studying accounting, so I had to be the diligent daughter and go help them. And so I saw their tax returns one year. And I said, wow, if I'm going to be going to school to make $40,000, then this doesn't make sense because the next generation is supposed to get better. So that didn't really make sense to me. So that's where my search really started. And I got very interested in financial services, right, from a very, very young age. And that's kind of what brought me here and to get to know you. And obviously, over the last 20 years, I've learned so much from you, through your workshops and through the, especially now with the TGR tour. I loved it. I loved every single minute of it. I've loved learning from all the speakers and just the energy there. I've been to a lot of different events over the years, and definitely the TGR and your events are always the best, bar none.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. What advice would you give people? Because your journey to where you are today, you've obviously had some challenges, had some ups and downs. What do you think your biggest adversity was? Like, what is the most challenging thing you face as an entrepreneur?
I think the most difficult thing I've faced is always listening to my inner voice, the thing that is telling me what the next step is, and not listening and trying to, be a good daughter or be a good, friend, or, or even listening to society, what they thought I should do. I think that was the biggest obstacle for me, to just really say, you know what, it's okay for me to, walk to my own, drummer. It's okay. I'm going to find people along that journey that are going to think just like I do, which I have. I found them in you, right? And in many of the other people that I've met that, that have validated that what I'm doing is what I'm on the right path. Because sometimes you don't see people beyond that, beyond where you're at, right? So my family was in the restaurant business, so the logical step was for me to go into the restaurant business, right? But I didn't see that opportunity anymore. It was very different. And, you know, I did go to school and I did learn something, and I knew that I wanted to be somewhere where I had like a big window of opportunity. I didn't want to be stuck somewhere.
Right.
So most people, a lot of my friends, you know, they graduated, you know, college. Some of them are retiring now. It's kind of weird because they're going into retirement mode, and it's very strange because to me, I feel like, wow, you know, you're so young. And their mentality changes. So I think because when people listen to what society says, they say, you know, you're supposed to go work somewhere for 20, 30 years, you know, make a good living, whatever that is now, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then they just kind of continue on that journey. And it's like, you know, I want to be around people that are alive and, you know, want to, you know, pursue their dreams.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
And so what tips would you give people? Because obviously when you were at your lowest point, you faced your adversities, you didn't quit. Like you still continued.
Yes.
Why? Like what would you tell someone who is struggling in their industry or business? Why to continue? Like what tool or, you know, skill or mindset, what do they need to overcome that challenge?
Well,
like what did you do when you were at your lowest point?
I called you sometime. Well, I called people around me, but I think what people have to do is they have to believe in themselves. They have to surround themselves with the type of tools. Obviously, is you want to read the right books, right? You want to read, books that are going to feed you, right? You want to make sure that you figure out what you want. Right? And it doesn't matter what anyone else says, you're going to continue to that path, right? Because I think one of the biggest things, you have to be a little bit stubborn, I think, you've got to be, committed, you've got to be disciplined, right? And, we all struggle with that. Obviously, I always tell people, I'm never early. I try, I promise, but so there's always those disciplines you have to work on every day, right? And I think the biggest thing though is I think just believing in yourself and knowing what you're doing, and I think one of the biggest things now that I think about it is whatever it is you're doing, learn it.
Yeah.
Actually invest the time. It's being an entrepreneur is not 9 to 5. It is, it's your life. It's what you do. And so you have to love what you do, and you have to be willing to work for it, whatever it is.
Yeah. So now, did you ever think that at any point, being of Mexican, Latino, Hispanic descent, that you were ever at a disadvantage becoming an entrepreneur?
To be honest with you, no. I never really saw that as a disadvantage. I don't know if that's because my parents were entrepreneurs and my grandmother was an entrepreneur, so I knew their biggest obstacle was always the language and not understanding the system. I think it was more of being a woman was more of a disadvantage actually than my heritage. Just because I was in the financial services industry, and I didn't look like a financial professional, right? I think that was more of a disadvantage, and I tell you that because it's kind of funny. I talked to my oldest brother actually today, who he won't care if I tell you how old he is. He's 66. So he got married 3 months before I was born. We were looking at something the other day, and so he always saw me as this a little girl, never able to give him any value. He thought he was always supposed to give value to me, and it took a long time for him to really say, you know what, I need to listen to you. I think you know what you're saying, and start to take some of my advice. It took a while, but I feel like I think that was more of an obstacle just as a woman. When you're working with families, you're usually working with a dad and a wife, and women, they like to talk to other women, but sometimes a man will say, well, what I got to listen to you for. Right? But I think over the years, I've seen that change in the financial services industry. And I think because I was consistent, I was always there, I always answer the phone, if I don't know something, I'll tell someone, what, I don't know, but let me find out, right? And I think all those things have helped me, really, to be honest with you. I never saw being Mexican or of Latino descent really as a disadvantage. But I think I saw more as being a woman as a disadvantage.
Okay. So what tips do you think you could give ladies or women in entrepreneurship? To be a woman, what would they have to do differently, or tips to be successful in entrepreneurship?
Being a woman, I think you have to, you have to find other women to, kind of toot your horn, kind of be your cheerleader in your corner. Or it can be a man, I had many men that were my cheerleaders, in my corner. But I think you have to believe in yourself. And I think regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, if you're going to go into be an entrepreneur, you've got to believe in yourself. And so as a woman, I think you just have to stand your ground. You have to know what you believe in, and you don't let anyone push you around. When it comes to the things that's why you've got to study your craft. Whatever it is you're doing, you got to know it.
So let's talk about that for a second. When you say study your craft, right? Because Napoleon Hill talks about in his book that one of the 13 ingredients is knowledge.
Correct.
Okay. So where would you recommend people to go and get knowledge? Like where did you get knowledge from to learn the things that you learned today?
Well, I read books, right? One of the first books I ever read was a Zig Ziglar book, right? That taught me about sales, because I didn't know anything about sales. To be honest with you, I didn't know how to talk to people, and I didn't even really think I needed sales experience. I'm just gonna give someone, my knowledge and tell them what they got to do next, whether it be their taxes or whatever they're gonna do, right? And I didn't, think I needed to know, but I found out that it is important to know about how to talk to people. So I would say Zig Ziglar, John Maxwell books. Failing Forward was the first book I read by John Maxwell. That was the first book I read. Someone recommended it to me. That was a book that I think whenever I felt like maybe I didn't get to where exactly I wanted to go, I would go back to, because I think that in our journey, sometimes we think we're not where we want to be, right? Exactly, but we don't realize that we've come so far, right? That we've come so far. So, that's where I got my knowledge. I went to, I got, whatever that I was doing, I went and I got, obviously credentialed and, licensed. I sought people, I looked for people that were more experienced in that field, and I learned from them, right? I tried to stick to them. That's one of the reasons why I stick with you, John, right? Because, your mind, right? All your knowledge. And just, obviously the Think and Grow Rich book, right? That book was very interesting for me. The first time I read it, to be honest with you, it's the first book I started reading and I threw across the wall. I wasn't ready for it. Mentally, it just and then about a year later, this was probably, about 10, 15 years ago, I don't even remember. And then, I don't know, one day because I didn't throw it away, you don't throw away books, I just threw it against the wall, right? Said I can't read it. And then I opened it, and it just started talking to me, the affirmations and just, the knowledge. And knowledge is important, but if you don't apply it to what you're doing, if it doesn't get you to where you want to go, or you don't share it, if you just keep it inside of you, that's knowledge is no good either. So you've got to be able to, if it's in business, obviously it's got to be able to produce for you in some way. It's got to become, revenue generating in some form, right? I would totally believe that people, when they start business, doesn't matter what they do, they should be making money at it.
Sure.
Right? That's something I believe. But all of that I learned through the knowledge, right? Because I didn't really, I didn't know much, right? I just kind of knew that you could have an opportunity. You could put your flag down somewhere, and if there was some opportunity, you could go for it.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to go back. So you take a book, you're reading Think and Grow Rich, and you threw it against the wall.
I did. It's the truth.
Yeah. So what took place between then and then you going back, and now all of a sudden this book is speaking to you? Like what happened?
There was growth. There was a lot of mental growth, a lot of mental, I guess in business, I kind of just always thought of business as like, I guess almost like a job. I guess I thought of business like another job, like, being just self-employed, right? Because, you do what you're taught, right? So that's what I was taught by my family. It's kind of like a job. You do it the best that you can. I think what happened is I started to surround myself with people that thought bigger, right? I started to, the people that I was actually listening to were like yourself, and many others had been studying this book. And so I was being taught the book without really, knowing. It was like I got it like in little bits and pieces. So I think I grew mentally, and just as far as, in a sense that I could really absorb it. Like I could take it and I felt like I could use it. Because I guess I never saw myself really at that point when I first read it. I was thinking more as a self-employed person, not as like a business owner, and just in general, how you could grow something and it could be like a legacy. Yeah. Just like Think and Grow Rich is, right? It's that, it's a legacy. It's not just a book. It's just the principles, just learning about it, even, being exposed to like Satish through the foundation, and to be honest with you, obviously my all-time favorite book is the Bible, right? That's my favorite book, but there's so many principles in most of the books that I've been attracted to, including Think and Grow Rich, that have those, it's like core principles. Sure. It's just core principles, and I think what happened was I grew, right? I started to understand what being an entrepreneur was. Dealing with people, and, needing tools for myself to grow, and then to help others grow. And so I think all of a sudden it started talking to me.
So that you just said something very interesting. It says, what does entrepreneur mean?
What does it mean? Oh, it means a lot of different things.
Yeah, because you just said, like, I want to know what entrepreneur meant, right? So what does that mean? What does entrepreneurship mean?
How do I see it now?
Yeah.
I see it as someone planting their flag somewhere and taking that and making it, financially, productive and profitable, right? Taking an idea and making it taking it out to the public and being able to make money with it, but also growing something that is really, different. Not like growing different, but that you're thinking differently than like someone that says, I just want to go have a 9-to-5 job. Yeah. Someone that's willing to take a risk, because there's a lot of risk involved. It's not, you risk your emotionally, financially, family-wise, because people don't always agree with what you're doing for whatever reason. And sometimes it's not because they want to hurt you. It's they actually think they're helping you. Right. They actually think they're helping you. And they're very, they're almost trying to protect you, but they're not. So being an entrepreneur is being able to say, you know what, it's okay. I'm going to move forward. I might fail, right? But as long as I'm failing forward, as long as I'm, starting to climb up not climb up a ladder, because that sounds like corporate, right? But if I'm reaching my goals little by little, or I'm hitting, the things that are important to me, and entrepreneurial is also a lifestyle. It's taking control, because you have to be able to do the things you want to do, right? So for me, I think the thing where it really hit me was, I guess, with my parents, and just when I had been in financial services for about 3-4 years. My dad got sick, And, you know, he was very ill. You know, he was very ill. We found out he had been fighting, you know, an illness for about 10 years. And, you know, he you know, got to a point where, you know, he came home on hospice, right? He came home on hospice. And my brothers, who are entrepreneurs, right? And then I had one of my other brothers, you know, he worked at a company, and then my other brother had gone back to teaching, right? And, you know, and I decided I was going to take care of my dad. Like, I didn't call anyone and tell him, hey, you know what, I'm not going into the office for 3 months.
Sure.
You know, obviously I let some people know. But I think what happened was right there, I saw the difference between being self-employed and building a business. Because I could see my brothers wanted to stay with my dad.
Sure.
Like, I could see they'd come every morning, but then they'd have to go. And at one point we had like a little family meeting, right? And they're like, so like, are we hiring someone or what? I'm like, well, yeah, we're hiring someone to come in and help, you know, do the bathing. I said, but no, I'm staying. And they're like, okay, so like, you know, are you going to need some money every month? Or, you know, because, you know, they're my older brothers, right? So they're wanting to take care of me too. And I'm like, no, I don't. Actually, I don't need any money. If I do, I'll let you know. And so I think right there, I think being an entrepreneur gives you power over your own life.
Well, that's great. I just love it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, Mariela, thank you very much for coming into our studio today and giving us a bunch of gold nuggets here that people can apply to their business. So I just want to tell all of you, if you are an entrepreneur, you know, the power of being an entrepreneur, as Mariela just said, is to give you that freedom so that you could do the things that you love to do, but more importantly is to have the freedom, the liberty to go and help your parents when they're in need. And so today, this episode with Mariela Sandoval, I hope that you apply what she shared with you guys today. I hope that you learn to continue to grow on a daily basis. That it ain't going to be easy, but if you continue and you've got the perseverance, there's nothing you can't do. So thank you very much for joining us today. Down below, you'll see a little link, and you'll see Mariela's information and her contact info. If you would, reach out to her. She's there for you. If you feel like you're kind of stuck where you want to be, where you are right now, and you can't get out, reach out to Mariela, ask her for some guidance and some counsel. So with that said, we'll see you at our next podcast show. Thank you very much for joining us today.